Kerr and the players, highlights from the game, and JD will take your calls. Warriors Wrap-Up starts now.
It does start now from Chase Center, where the Warriors fell again to the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight, 116-110. Very similar game to last night, as the Warriors beaten by the Cavs, almost the same score, 118-110. Last night, 116-110. It's funny, Timberwolves had a shot at a garbage time layup there at the end and didn't want to run it up against the Warriors. Otherwise, it would have been the exact same score as last night, and real similar game to last night. The Warriors struggling offensively and struggling to put the ball in the basket against a good defensive team. Cavaliers, good defensive team, a lot of length, a lot of size. Timberwolves have been playing very well, been the best team in the NBA defensively in the first couple of weeks of the season, and the Warriors really had their problems, aside from Steph Curry, of course, who went for 38 points. But you look at the rest of what's going on for the Warriors, and it's just tough right now. Offensively, they don't have a secondary scorer that they can rely on a night-in, night-out basis. The ball movement has not been there. The spacing, I think, was bad for the Warriors in this game tonight. And they're not getting enough good looks. They're not getting out in transition, and they're not hitting the open shots that they do get once they're there. And so you add it all up, and it's been a rough couple of nights here at Chase Center, where the Warriors fall to 1-3 now, so 5-2 on the road, but 1-3 at home, and that's now negating some of the Warriors had been able to do in the early part of the season on the road. And this homestand continues on Tuesday night. Going to be another game against the Timberwolves, who now find themselves at 7-2 and 2-2 away from home. I mentioned in the pregame that the Timberwolves have played exceptional basketball at home. 5-0 start for them at home with some big-time wins, beat the Celtics, beat the Nuggets, and all of that. And this looks like, at least for tonight, sometimes the Timberwolves can be a little erratic themselves, a little undisciplined, but they played a pretty clean and disciplined game against the Warriors in this one tonight. And the Warriors just didn't have an answer. Beyond Steph Curry, tough stuff. Andrew Wiggins, another rough night. Just when it appears maybe he's turning the corner, 6 points tonight on 3 of 7. He's a -13. Can't get it going. And Klay Thompson, second straight night for Klay, 5 of 16. You mentioned carbon copy games, very similar game. 5 of 16 tonight. 5 of 16 last night for Klay Thompson to go with 16 points. He had 14 last night. Steph goes for 30 last night, goes for 38 tonight, and the next time man for the Warriors last night was 14. Klay Thompson was the number 2 man for the Warriors in this one tonight. He had 16, and it's just going to, the bench, second night in a row where the bench did win the overall matchup against the opponent's bench, but they didn't dominate. And we discussed it on the program last night, the fact that the Warriors bench has been able to dominate in a handful of games here at the beginning of the year has allowed them to be more complementary. It's allowed them to be, Steph goes for his 30-plus point massive game, and you've got multiple players going for 10, 15, up and down, and the bench dominating the opposition's bench. And that had been, you don't need a Wiggins or a Klay Thompson to have a massive game alongside Curry to be able to win when you're doing that and you're defending and you're competing at the level that the Warriors were competing at. But that's been gone. No, not terrible bench performances, but not dominant bench performances. The Warriors have needed dominant in their bench performances. And right now, it's just too many guys that they can't make a shot on this Warriors team. And the last couple of games, and I think just putting things real bluntly and honestly, the Warriors have looked a little old in these last couple of games. Doesn't mean the season's over. Doesn't mean they can't bounce back and look a lot better and play more effective basketball on Tuesday and continue this homestand. I mean, still 4 games to go, but it's not getting any easier. You get the rematch with the Timberwolves. You get a couple of games against OKC. You got Houston, who's been playing really well to start the season themselves after an 0-3 start. You look at the Rockets, and the Rockets have been really good since then. 6 in a row, won again tonight, and now 6-3 on the season. So you're looking at a bunch of teams right now that are right basically where the Warriors are in the standings, that they're going to be playing to close out this trip. Rockets right there, Oklahoma City right there, Warriors now currently, although it's still too early to start looking at who ranks where in the West, but they're all the way down to 6th after being right there in the top 2 before this 3-game losing streak. So 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. That is the phone number to give me a call or shoot me a text here. Warriors wrap up on 95.7 The Game as the Dubs lose tonight 116-110 to the Timberwolves. And I'm at a little bit of a loss tonight as far as what the adjustments are, at least in the short term, that can be made. I know Steve Kerr said before the game against the Cavaliers, no starting lineup changes are coming at this point. And I'm not even sure what Steve Kerr would do if he was going to make a lineup change, because you either have bench players where you're happy with them in their role, or you have bench players that aren't playing well enough to where you say, compared to the starters, you're going to, who off the bench are you going to sub in for Klay Thompson? I mean, you're not. You're just not. You're not going to. Klay Thompson's not going to the bench, and Klay Thompson's the last couple of games hasn't played well, but he'd been fine, I think, up until the last couple of games with the 5-16. So you're not doing that. Andrew Wiggins. Who you putting in for Andrew Wiggins? I mean, Moses Moody was 1 for 6 tonight and a -10. Jonathan Kuminga I thought he brought a lot of energy, especially in the first half tonight. He was a plus tonight. He was much more active. I thought, there's been some games where Kuminga scored in some second halves after not playing well in the first half. I thought his energy was there in both halves tonight, but again, he's 2 of 11. And while he was a plus player tonight in terms of the plus-minus, the Warriors still don't really view him as a 3. At least they haven't. So saying you're going to sub him for Andrew Wiggins, I don't think that's necessarily realistic at this point, especially when you start to hint, as Steve Kerr did last night, like Andrew Wiggins is maybe turning a little bit of a corner. And it'll be interesting to see what's going on. I know he popped up on the injury report with a little bit of a back issue, had been listed as probable and, of course, played, but it makes you wonder, is there maybe something going on physically that hadn't been reported to this point with Wiggins as to why maybe he hasn't looked like the better version of himself so far this season. So not a lot really, I think, that can be done. I think, do you mix in a little more Trayce Jackson-Davis against some bigger teams? I think that's one thing you could do. Podziemski tends to be somebody that when he's played, he's energy, he's ball movement. He knocked down a couple of threes in a minute when it looked like the Warriors, for a second straight night after Steve Kerr had waved the white flag and conceded victory to the opponent, looked like that bench group at the end was going to try and steal the game. Podziemski gets a couple of threes. I mean, the Warriors had a layup that could have cut it down to what I think a 2-point game that they missed. There were a number of missed layups, even with the regulars in the game down the stretch, when they could have found themselves trying to be in a position to steal it. But you add it all up again, and it winds up being a pretty ugly loss that sends the Warriors now to their first 3-game losing streak of the season, and they got to figure out home. That's if this team's going to be the best version of themselves, it's going to have to be 30 home wins. And Minnesota got them in this building last year, but the slow start is negating some of the positivity from the great road start, because the thought process was, hey, 5-2 on the road, 7 of 9. Maybe the Warriors threw the toughest, at least one of the toughest stretches of their schedule right at the beginning of the season. You come home, you start making hay, but it can't just be you show up and expect because you're at home that you're just automatically going to be winning games. The Warriors are not a bunch of made dudes like that anymore. They got to come out, they got to play well, they got to be consistent. And again, a lot of times it just comes down to shot making above everything else, and that's been the thing that has been lacking. I think the Warriors' spacing offensively has also been poor these last couple of games, going up against two really, really, really good defensive teams. So, what do you do? What are the adjustments to be made? And I think Gary Payton II has been, bothered a little bit by this infection from this cut. He hasn't quite been out there as much. as he had been in other games. I think the Timberwolves and the Cavaliers, and more so the Cavaliers, are a more difficult matchup for him to be out there, but they haven't been quite getting the production from Gary Payton. Chris Paul struggling to make shots consistently. Moody didn't have it tonight. Again, Kuminga, for all of the energy things I said he brought, 2 of 11. You can't have that. And they're in a difficult position with Dario Saric, because Dario Saric is probably the Warriors' second best player tonight. 11 points, 10 boards, held his own defensively, but he's not a great defender. And other teams look to hunt him when he's on the floor. So you're forced into playing Saric more minutes tonight, 27, than maybe you really, truly want to, because you need his offense, but him being out there on the floor more regularly causes problems defensively, but you need his offense. And why do you need his offense? You need his offense because Wiggins is got 6 points, and Klay Thompson's 5 of 16, and Jonathan Kuminga's 2 of 11. So, that's maybe somewhere where Steve Kerr could potentially turn. All right, 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. Armand in San Jose is up here on 95.7 The Game. What's going on, Armand?
JB, we've been having talks of last season, of course. Here's the thing, JB. I think that we are definitely going to look older, against the younger teams because, we're older, they're younger. We've got to get home soft. I see a reversal. We are clearly much better on the road, and maybe it's because there's some determination. At home, I don't know if they expect to win just because they're at home, but whatever the case may be, 3 of the 4 games they played at home is dead ugly, shooting the ball. They got to solve that because you have to have home court advantage no matter how good of a road team you are. Also, another thing, too, the Warriors being an older team that were never athletically superior when they were younger shows up more as you age, because you don't have any other athleticism that you can go to. When you're more athletic than everybody when you're younger, even if you fall off a bit, you still can keep up with the youngsters maybe a little bit more. The fact that we just don't have that with our core 3 and Hurt as they slip. This is why Steph Curry shooting the ball so well still makes him so effective. Klay Thompson's lack of shot making, JD, is killing him. There are so many shots that we were accustomed to seeing Klay Thompson make that these are just misses, whether they're open, slightly open, or just some of these threes that, he's coming off a pin down or so, and you think, he's got that. It might be a defender near. But we're used to seeing him make those. He's getting a lot of the same looks. He's just missing them. His shooting touch is not there. Another thing, too, I want to say about the young guys we have. Steve come to the realization that you probably need to play this group of youngsters unlike last year where there was this debate. I don't think there's any debate. You need to put TJD out there a little more often. You may have to look at pods. There has to come a realization, despite you trying to compete for a championship, you got young guys on this team that could develop and possibly help you win in the process, but you got to make a decision. I don't want to be riding a line with having to play veterans a certain amount of time when they're giving me not much of anything, energy. I mean, it's just so lethargic, and I don't know what's up with
Armand. Hey, let me jump in real quick. I don't hang up. I want to have a little conversation with you. I think the question is not that Steve Kerr feels comfortable or doesn't feel comfortable playing Trayce Jackson-Davis or Podziemski. I think the bigger question for him is for who? Because right now Saric is one of the better offensive players. And so it's if Trayce Jackson-Davis is going to play, it's for who? And I think that's the question. So I'm just going to ask you that. And if it's Podziemski, it's Podziemski for who? Is it Podziemski for Klay? Is it Podziemski for Chris Paul? And so I think that's the question. It's not so much unwilling to play them or feeling they're not up to where they need to be able to play, like maybe Moody and Kuminga were in previous years. But for who, when you have this roster kind of built for these players that I just mentioned to be counted on a lot?
And you know what, JD? I'm glad you went there because this is the tough conversation Warrior fans don't want to have. When this day was coming, I would tell Warrior fans that I know, that I work with, so I said, there's going to come a time where if Clay or whoever, let's not just look at Clay, just whoever, right? There comes a time where the young guys make it a spark where the older guys can't, and you may have to cut into some of those older guys' minutes, whether it's Clay, whether it's Looney or TJD here and there. Like, we got to be honest about this. Like, we praise these guys when they play well, but the only person who has kind of maintained the course is Steph Curry. That's the only reason why we have this conversation, if we want to be honest. Now, Dre has been pretty solid offensively. I'll give him credit for that. But for the most part, like we said with Sarge, you're not really getting nothing else. And the fact of the matter is, because of that, unfortunately, we have to ask these tough questions and make tough decisions. Is it saying that you cut a guy's minutes in half? Of course not. But in spurts where you can feel the lull in the crowd just on the court, that burst of energy that Podziemski brings and TJD, like, at some point in time, some got to give. I'm sorry, but you got to look at the team you have, not the team you want or the team you have, and maybe that'll light a fire into some guys too.
Thanks, Armand. Great phone call. Really appreciate it. Armand checking in here at 888-957-9570. I mean, I'll pose the question to you Warrior fans. I mean, because that really is what it boils down to. I hear a lot of the young guys need to play more. But the question, and I don't even disagree with that. I'm not even going to push back on it. I don't get the impression that Steve Kerr feels Podziemski and Trayce Jackson-Davis at this point are unplayable. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think he is comfortable playing him. But you can't play 13. You can't every single night. And, it's just nobody's going to get quite enough minutes. So the question becomes, if Trayce Jackson-Davis needs to play, for who? Is it Looney? I mean, Looney only played 19 tonight. Saric played 27, but Saric was probably their second best player tonight after Stephen Curry. So if you're saying Trayce Jackson-Davis tonight, is it Trayce Jackson-Davis for Draymond? Is it Podziemski for Clay, who played 33 minutes? That's the tough question, and I think Armand hit on it. It's the tough question because there's a lot of play the young guys more. They bring energy. They need it. Play Kuminga more. Kuminga played 23 minutes, which is about what he's getting every single night. Could he be playing? I think Kuminga, if Kuminga was consistent, making shots with the pull-up game and getting into the basket, like if he had some first halves that coincided with some of the second halves he had in a handful of games and all that, then he would be making the case to maybe start. But he hasn't because he's had some. I thought tonight was more balanced, but you look up and he's 2 for 11. So where do you go at that point? Like I think he's probably playing the right amount of minutes. Unless you start talking about knocking Wiggins down to 10, 12 minutes a game, which I don't think that's necessarily going to happen at all. But so it is a trickier situation with the way that this team was built, and who do you take the minutes away from on a given night? Because if it's Podziemski, you're really talking about Clay, you're talking about Chris Paul, and maybe you're talking a little bit about Gary Payton II at this point, or because Podziemski's basically a 2 for this Warriors team. So that's Trayce Jackson-Davis is a 5 that has played some 4. It can be kind of a combo. They've combined him with Saric at different times because he can get out and cover a little bit more on the perimeter. Trayce Jackson-Davis can, so you can run some combinations like that together. So it in a lot of ways, it's almost built with the way this Warriors roster is constructed to need to have somebody unavailable to open up that rotation slot to play because it's hard to play 12. And it's hard to get the right – if you are going to play 12, it's hard to find the right 4 to 6 minute shift for everybody on a given night. You're always going to have some kind of weakness if you try to do it that way every single night and try to say, well, tonight so-and-so's got it versus giving them or tonight so-and-so doesn't have it. So you're going to pull them rather than give them an opportunity to maybe work their way into a better flow later in the game. And look, there have been opportunities. I'll use Kuminga as an example, where Steve Kerr, after some of those first halves that I mentioned, he could have not gone back to him in the second half and given somebody else an opportunity. He didn't do that, and the fact that he didn't do that worked to the benefit of the Warriors because Kuminga played well in the second half. So are you going to do that with Klay? Are you going to see, Klay has a 2 for 8, 2 for 9 first half, so now you're going to play Podziemski instead of Klay rather than give Klay, a future Hall of Famer, the opportunity to try and bounce back? Not saying I have the answer there, but it's a much more tricky balance as far as how to get all of these players the proper minutes and the proper roles on the proper night. All right, let's go ahead and pause here quickly for a station ID, then we'll get back to the phones. 888-957-9570. It is Warriors Wrap-Up here on 95.7 The Game.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union.
All right, let's get back to the phones. We got a couple of text messages to get to on the Comcast Business text line as well. We've also got our Extending the Three-Point Line feature for tonight. We'll get to that, our hardest working player of the game. But let's get Adam in San Jose next here on Warriors Wrap-Up. Hey, Adam.
Hey, JD, how you doing? So Steve Kerr had no issues playing Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb, who were two-way players last year. So he certainly shouldn't have an issue playing Podziemski and TJD, who are on the official 15-man roster this year. And yeah, 100%, he needs to play Podziemski in place of Klay, and then somehow work TJD into the rotation where Andrew Wiggins' minutes get cut, who is absolutely killing us this entire season, and Klay Thompson as well. And then cut Kuminga's minutes. Kuminga is just as bad as Andrew Wiggins. Podziemski brings so much energy. You see the guy coming off the bench, celebrating his teammates, whether it's actually scoring. He feels like he has a point to prove, and he's obviously scoring when he gets his opportunity. Klay's minutes need to get reduced drastically. Andrew Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, and even Moses Moody, when they don't have it, we need to go dig deeper into the bench and give those guys a shot.
Thanks for the call. Again, I don't think it's an unwillingness. I think it's more of you kind of said it, Adam. You're saying play Trayce Jackson-Davis instead of Wiggins. Well, they don't play the same position. and that's where, if Trayce Jackson-Davis is going to play, then that means then that means somebody else is going to be out of position. So it's not like it would be easy if there was, somebody, and again, I'll use Kuminga. If Kuminga was playing awesome and, averaging 18 a night and efficiently and flying around and making play, like if he was the absolute best version of himself, if he was the player that a lot of Warrior fans think he is, even though he's not, we could have a very simple conversation of he gets more minutes than Wiggins. But it's not that simple because you've got and I don't think Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb and all that has nothing to do with it. Those guys were playing basically because the Warriors had injuries and had to be fit into the rotation. Ty Jerome was playing on nights where Steph Curry was out, and Ty Jerome was playing on nights where Klay Thompson wasn't playing in back-to-backs, and Jordan Poole would go into the starting lineup, and then you would need a backup ball handler because Poole would go in next to Steph, and then you wouldn't have that player. So, Ty Jerome wasn't, again, I know he's somebody that draws the ire of Warrior fans, but, as your fifth guard, Ty Jerome was a ball handler. Moses Moody's not a ball handler. So they don't play the same position in that. So it was never, Ty Jerome's playing over Moses Moody. Again, this is a last year conversation. I'll stop there. And a lot of times Anthony Lamb was playing alongside Kuminga because Kuminga was more of a 4 and Anthony Lamb was more of a shooter, and they were both 4-3-3-4 types. But there were a lot of lineups last year where Lamb and Kuminga played together, and those were, with Draymond Green, some of the Warriors' most efficient lineups and effective lineups for lengthy stretches of the year. So again, that's a 2022-23 conversation, not a 23-24 conversation. We'll bring it back to present day here and get locked in. But I don't think it's different teams, different scenarios. I don't think Anthony Lamb and Ty Jerome have anything to do with Trayce Jackson-Davis and Brandon Podziemski. And again, I think Steve Kerr is more willing to play Trayce Jackson-Davis and Brandon Podziemski than he was willing to play Jonathan Kuminga or Moses Moody or even James Wiseman the first couple of years of their careers. I think he trusts them more 10 games, 11 games into their careers than he trusted any of those other players that I just mentioned. It's not about trust. It's about the way this roster was built. If they wanted to be a title contender, it was going to be contingent on Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson playing great. It was, Klay Thompson being a more consistent version of the overall stats that he put up last year, where the bad games don't kill you. Well, what do I always say about Klay? When he has a bad game, the Warriors basically can't win. Like when it's a 5 of 16, 7 of 19 kind of a game, they basically can't win. And they really can't win if nobody else, if Wiggins is not doing it, at the same time. And it almost doesn't matter what the players off the bench do unless it's going to be a 52-12 type of advantage, which the Warriors have had in some of these games. So, yeah, it's easy to say play the young guys more. It's harder to say, and there have been a couple of callers that have said it tonight. It's going to be a conversation, I think, all week here at 95.7, the game coming up as it relates to the Warriors. The difficult conversation is, do you want the young guys to take minutes from the vets and in some cases the future Hall of Fame players? That's the question that needs to be had if you really want to go down that road. Again, I'm not sure we're at a point where 11 games in with the Warriors at 6-5 that you really want to necessarily go down that road. I think there's still time for Wiggins to turn a corner. I think Klay Thompson was going to have stretches where he's just as hot as he was last year. Again, I think up until the last 2 games, Klay's been fine for the most part. Like, I think we're talking about 2 bad games, shooting the ball. I still think Klay's doing other things on the court tonight as well. I think he's holding his own defensively and kind of figuring out the new way that he's going to have to play and be effective. It's just as simple as he didn't make shots tonight. And shots that throughout his career he usually consistently makes. And there's more nights the last 2 years where he doesn't consistently make them. But there's still other nights where he's going to be red and white hot. So it's just, a couple of games consecutively to where that hasn't happened. So do you want to wait for that to happen and trust that it will, or do you want to start making some wholesale changes? I mean, that's the balance, and how do you go about doing it? And again, I think the Warriors believe they have a very deep roster, and that's a problem that Steve Kerr is going to have to figure out here in the coming days and the coming games. I also think they just need to get a little bit more balance and floor spacing and just overall spacing within the offense to open up some of the lanes. But you can see, I mean, the Timberwolves are a good defensive team. They're extremely physical. They try to funnel people into Gobert. McDaniels is a terrific defensive player. He makes guards work for everything. Anthony Edwards has got that dog in him in a big way. Like he plays so forcefully. And I think this Timberwolves team's starting to take on more of his personality, which is Chris Finch, their head coach's personality, wanting to be more of a rugged, tough, physical, top-flight defensive unit. And that's part of the reason why they're up to 7-2 on the season. And some are thinking that, this isn't going to be a 7 seed or an 8 seed or a 9 seed this year with Minnesota. If they stay healthy, some people think they could be a top 4, top 5 seed in the Western Conference. They're absolutely off to that sort of start through the first 9 games of the season. All right, 888-957-9570, 888-957-9570. It's John Dickinson on Warriors Wrap-Up here on 95.7 The Game. 116-110, the final. Timberwolves beat the Warriors here tonight on 95.7 The Game. All right, let's keep rolling here, and we'll get to our extending the three-point line for tonight.
Curry off a pick by Draymond. Behind the back of the dribble. Curry working hard. Backs up, takes a 3, hit it, swish. Stephen Curry with a 3. And Rudy Gobert hearing it from Chris Finch right now.
Yeah, it had to be Steph Curry. Steph Curry does it again, knocking down 4 3-pointers, had 5 tonight. So he's hit 4 or more in each of the first 11 games this season. Stephen Curry on what was a cold shooting night for him from three, but you score 38 points. He got to the free throw line 12 times and made 11 of 12. I mean, Steph is doing everything he can to help the Warriors have chances to win these games, but he needs some freaking help, and he's not getting that help right now from the bench collectively. I don't think this is on the bench guys, though. I mean, to me, this is on the starters. This is on Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins and Klay Thompson to start putting it together offensively and putting some points on the board to help Steph Curry out, because this team was built to have more than they've gotten from those two to this point in the season. That extending the three-point line, as always, brought to you by West Coast Men's Health, successfully treating men for ED and chronic pain. Visit westcoastmenshealth.com for more information there. All right, our hardest worker of the game, we'll get that in right now as well, brought to you by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, who works hard to serve the community. Are you looking for a career in law enforcement? If you are, you can learn more about job opportunities with the Alameda County Sheriff's Office at joinacso.com. That's joinacso.com. And our hardest worker of the game tonight for the Warriors, I'm going to give it to Dario Saric for his 27 minutes and 11 points to go with 10 boards in the game tonight. 11 points, 10 boards, double-double in this game for Saric. I thought he held his own defensively. At times he does get attacked. But, again, the Warriors needed the buckets, and it wasn't a perfect night, but he was out there trying to give the Warriors everything he had. I am going to give an honorable mention for hardest worker of the game tonight to Brandon Podziemski. Podziemski hits a couple of threes, got off 5 shots in a minute and 16, and scored 8 points and was a +6 as it looked like the reserves versus reserves. The Timberwolves reserves were going to cough it up to the Warriors reserves after Steve Kerr basically conceded the game. Second night in a row that happened down the stretch. The Cavs put their starters back in the game in the final minute last night because the Warriors bench group made them have to do that. And so, that group, when given the opportunity, even in that situation where the game is all but over, the Warriors had a shot at a layup to make it a 2-point game where they would have been in position to get another stop or foul and get the ball back and have a chance at maybe even forcing an OT. So that was a hell of a job. And Podziemski's energy gets him an honorable mention for the hardest worker of the game. 8 points in a minute and out there hustling around, trying to make plays, had a steal in that minute 16 as well. So your hardest worker of the game, brought to you by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, who works hard to serve the community. Again, if you're looking for a career in law enforcement, learn more about job opportunities at joinacso.com. Couple of things on the Comcast Business text line. 415, Klay keeps taking 16 shots to score 16 points. It's too inefficient. How about Wiggins start taking the second most shots each night? Yeah, I mean, Wiggins being aggressive is, I think, part of the problem. But part of the reason why Wiggins is not being aggressive is because his confidence is down because he's not playing well. So it becomes this chicken or the egg circular thing, right? Wiggins is not making shots. So because he's not making shots, he gets more tentative. And because he's more tentative, he can't snap out of his funk. And it just is this vicious cycle right now. I do think the Warriors need to do a better job at trying to get Wiggins more shots early in the game. And I do think it's time for a conversation. And look, I'm sure Steve Kerr has conversations like this with players all the time. He may have already had one. It may be an ongoing thing. He may think, hey, this is silly. I don't need to have one. But I do think it's time for a conversation with Wiggins as far as, hey, man, you're close to turning the corner if that's what you truly believe, and that's what Steve Kerr said publicly. Keep at it. We're going to get you the rock. We're going to try to lean on you. Because, again, we're talking about two specific players. Maybe the conversation with Klay Thompson's a little bit different. I was surprised to hear Steve Kerr say before the game yesterday that he thought Klay Thompson was pressing a little bit. I didn't really see or think Klay Thompson was pressing nearly at the level that he was last year, where a lot of bad shooting games would turn into games where he would just cast off. I don't really feel like Klay Thompson has done that. Now, yeah, 16 shots for 14 points, 16 shots for 16 points, that's not nearly efficient enough. But, I don't know that there is necessarily a conversation to be had with Klay. He's just got to make shots. Like, I don't really think he's taken that many bad shots. It's just he's got to make them. Like, I think Klay's in a better call me crazy. The production hasn't been there, but I actually think that the way Klay is trying to play within himself in the context of the team has been solid. And so if there's any adjustment for Klay, it may be one that Warrior fans don't want to hear, but it may be, hey, Klay, go be YOLO Klay. Go be, I'm just going to just cast off, unabashed, like every shot's going in and let the chips fall where they may. And, so again, if there is a conversation to be had, I think that's the one, because I was really surprised to see or to hear Steve Kerr say that he thought Klay was pressing. Like, I hadn't sensed that. I mean, he does tend to get frustrated when shots are not going down, but that's just because he's a great shooter that's used to hitting those shots and wants to win. But the competitive spirit for Klay Thompson is there, beyond belief. I think it's still there full-fold as it was at any other point. It's just not as successful as consistently as it has been in the past. And yeah, tonight, obviously, tonight the Timberwolves dominated the paint. I mean, for the 415 chiming in, and it hadn't been mentioned to this point specifically, I'd mentioned the size, but the points in the paint, second game in a row. But again, points in the paint isn't just bigs. Points in the paint is putting pressure on the perimeter and not being able to stop the ball. Like, I think a lot of times people think, well, points in the paint is big men, backing you down, and maybe in 1995, maybe in 2004, but points in the paint now a lot of times are transition layups. A lot of times it's getting, and there wasn't a lot of transition going on in the game really either way. But yeah, the Timberwolves 62 points in the paint to the Warriors 38. I mean, that's the story of the game, really, in this one tonight. Next to the ability or inability for the Warriors to knock down shots consistently, but Golden State going to get another chance at trying to make it work when they reconvene against the Timberwolves right back here in Chase Center on Tuesday night. And so, adjustments, force, spacing, looking at the film. The Warriors in all these playoff series that they've won have been tremendous, exceptional at making adjustments. And so can they do it from one game to, this is a lot like dropping the first game of a playoff series with the home court advantage, and you got to bounce back and you got to try and win the second game. So, the Warriors have been very good at doing that on the rare occasion they've lost the first game. So we'll see how they're able to respond. And again, as Steve Kerr always says in these playoff series, it's the simple fact that a lot of times the adjustment is emotion and physicality and flying around and making plays. 888-957-9570. Let's keep it moving. It's Ali Campa in Newark. Hey, Ali.
Kali Kampa, my brother. Kali Kampa.
Ali Campa, I got you. I will not make that mistake again, my friend. Thank you for giving me the call tonight.
Yeah, no problem, my brother. My honor. I want to say, very frustrated. Warriors losing game, no good. I've been fan long time. Since India, I watched the Warrior, and maybe make a trade. Maybe time to trade Klay Thompson because make too much money, and I don't know if he's consistent, my brother. He cannot throw a rock in the ocean right now.
Not the last two games, Ali Campa. And thank you for the call. Don't make it your last call. Checking in from Newark. I don't think it's time to trade Klay Thompson. Again, the Warriors doubled and tripled down on their core. And, I think Tim Kawakami, the Athletic, had put this out on Twitter, and I made a note of it as a concept to bring up on the show. He's going back and forth with people as he often does. And it's at one point he says, this is the team. And I think this is the team, for 20, 30, 50 games before a dramatic decision is going to be made. I mean, the Warriors have gone all in on Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green with Steve Kerr as the core. They've gone all in on Chris Paul is going to be the guy that leads the bench unit and is somebody that can be effective in some closing lineups with that other group, and then pick your fifth. I think the Warriors intend for that fifth to be Wiggins, but he hasn't played well enough to earn it. So it's been Payton some nights, it's been Kuminga one or two nights, a lot of Payton. And maybe it's Looney. Saric could be one of those guys. I mean, Steve Kerr's laid out all these different ways, but this is the team. And so the adjustments are going to have to come from within. Like, drastic trades and all those things, that's a conversation for 3 months from now at the trade deadline. We're talking 3 months away from having a conversation. If this thing totally gets awry, and I don't think it will, then maybe we're having those dramatic conversations, but we're not having those dramatic conversations yet. Because this is the team, and I think they want this team to be able to grow and work itself out. And look, 2 nights ago, it looked like they were, on the brink of being able to put together a consistent run here with this homestand coming out. So it's not all lost or anything like that. But the adjustments are going to have to come from within. I mean, I look up and down the stat sheet and look at the roster. Wiggins has got to play better. Klay Thompson has got to play better. Steve Kerr's going to have to figure out ways to maybe mix Trace Jackson-Davis and Brandon Podziemski in. Kuminga has got to play better. And again, he's a young player. He's a role player. I don't want to make it all about him. Tonight the energy was there, but he's got to play better. He has not, he's basically been a C player this year. You add up his good and bad, add it all up, he's probably been about a C or a C minus. He has not been some exceptional, awesome player for the Warriors this season. He's got to play better if he's going to be somebody that's a regular, and be more consistent, frankly. He's got to be steadier. It can't be terrible one half and pretty good the second half. Saric, I think, has been, for the most part, steady, but there's been nights where he can't hit a shot. When he doesn't hit shots, then it's tough for him to be on the floor consistently. Chris Paul, the Warriors are going to need a little scoring from Chris Paul, which they didn't get tonight. But the answers, folks, are going to come from within, at least for the next 3 months. And, the one thing I'm going to say a lot after losses, and I think the Timberwolves, as they're currently constituted, are probably going to be a playoff team in the Western Conference. We'll hold off on the top 4, top 5 business. But the reality is, every night the Warriors don't win, especially when they don't win at home or don't win against bad teams. Last 2 nights they've played good teams, in my opinion. So I'm not going to factor this in as part of that. But every time they lose at home or get on a losing streak when they're whole, this Warriors team's whole right now. Their top 13 is healthy. I look at the inactives every night, and the inactives are Garuba and Quinones and Robinson and Guy Santos. If the Warriors are fully whole, those are going to be the 4 inactives every single night. And so that means that this team, they've got to be better than 6-5 when they're whole, because there is going to come a point where they are going to have to deal with injuries, and Steph's going to miss 10 games, and Draymond's going to have to miss some time again. Klay may have to miss some time. They're not going to be whole this entire season. And so you got to make hay when you are, and that's where I do think these last couple of games hurt a little bit, not being able to get one, but still plenty of time, plenty of games ahead to be able to try and figure this thing out. All right, we'll call it a night on that note. Incredible job by everybody in our San Francisco studios, beginning with Sterling Bennett. He was here doing the 49ers show with Grandy. Grandy's been there all day. Sterling's been there all day. Craig Valentino's been there. Been just dudes doing just bell to bell, big time, full days with our 49er coverage in the morning and on into the afternoon, leading back up to the Warriors game tonight. And on a back-to-back. A lot of these guys are working the Warriors game yesterday on top of that as well, or the Warriors This Week show that we did. So really it's been an incredible, just exceptional work by everybody. I want to make sure I make a point to note that. Hard-working people at 95.7 The Game behind the scenes, getting the job done. And again, basically 2 double days in a row for a lot of these guys. So I'm going to give them my a little hardest workers of the night and of the weekend applause here to close out the program. We'll be back on Tuesday, 6 o'clock, Warriors Live, going to be at Ballast Point Brewing Company. Ballast Point Brewing Company, join me for Warriors Live, have a brew, stop by, get some food, and it'll be a good time. 705 16th Street by Chase Center. It's walking distance. Ballast Point Tasting Room and Kitchen. Warriors Live, 6 o'clock. We'll be on the air. It's the Warriors and the Timberwolves again, and then post-game, we'll be with you right here from Chase Center breaking down a Warriors-Timberwolves matchup where I know a lot of Warrior fans are hoping Golden State can get back on track, snap this little 3-game losing streak. All right, that'll do it. We'll talk to you Tuesday. Timberwolves get the better of the Warriors. They win it tonight, 116-110, and you heard it all right here on 95.7 The Game.
Happy 62nd birthday, Granddad.
Thanks, sweetheart.
I got you this.
A mug. What does it say? Beware. If you are 60 or older, you may be at increased risk of serious consequences from RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, compared to adults younger than 60.
Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. RSV vaccines, including Pfizer's, are available. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The Gillette Intimate Trimmer gives you a gentle, easy way to trim your pubic region. Or you could try waxing. Nope. From America's #1 trusted men's grooming brand, the best a man can get, down there. Buy Gillette Intimate at a retailer near you.
Fill your game day cooler with the refreshing taste of Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Smooth, real brewed tea with a 5% kick of alcohol. Look for the bright yellow cans. Twisted Tea. Keep it twisted.
Twisted Tea Brewing Company, Cincinnati, Ohio. Please drink responsibly.
Have you ever had an unwelcome pest in your home? Not fun. Atco Pest Control has been proud to provide professional pest control in the San Francisco Bay Area for over 35 years, offering guaranteed protection against the pests they treat. Atco uses natural methods and effective solutions to give you peace of mind and keep your family out of harm's way. Quality pest control doesn't have to empty your savings. Don't wait. For all your pest control needs, go to atcopestcontrol.com today.
I can't wait for what's next, even with higher stroke risk due to atrial fibrillation and irregular heartbeat not caused by a heart valve problem. Eliquis, the Apixaban tablets, reduces stroke risk. It's the #1 cardiologist-prescribed blood thinner.
Don't stop taking prescription Eliquis without talking to your doctor, as this may increase your risk of stroke. Eliquis can cause serious and, in rare cases, fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve, abnormal bleeding, or have antiphospholipid syndrome. While taking, you may bruise more easily or take longer for bleeding to stop. A spinal injection while on Eliquis increases risk of blood clots, which may cause paralysis, the inability to move. Get medical help right away for unexpected bleeding or unusual bruising, or if you have tingling, numbness, or muscle weakness. It may increase your bleeding risk if you take medicines such as aspirin products, NSAIDs, SSRIs, SNRIs, and blood thinners. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures. Learn more at Eliquis.com or call 1-855-ELIQUIS.
He's the best interview in the Bay Area.
Feeling, energetic and recharged, and I really like our team, and everything's good.
And he joins Willard and Dibbs every week during the NBA season.
Right.
Steve Kerr is brought to you by Xfinity. The Xfinity 10G network is made for streaming live sports, which means it's the network you can rely on in the biggest moments. The Xfinity 10G network, the best way to stream your Warriors.
This Veterans Day, Great Clips is giving you a great way to say thanks to the men and women who have served our country. Come into Great Clips on Saturday, November 11th, and with the purchase of a haircut, Great Clips will give you a free haircut card to pass along to a veteran or current military member. Thank a friend, family member, or even a stranger. Veterans can stop in for a free haircut on Saturday, November 11th. The free haircut cards are redeemable until December 1st, 2023. Visit GreatClips.com to find a salon near you. To all veterans, thank you from Great Clips. Limit 1 per customer while supplies last at participating salons.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of